Greetings in the precious name of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Thank you so much for joining me today. Welcome to End Time Preparedness. Let's begin with a few biblical-based scriptures, lest Satan should get advantage of us, for we are not ignorant of his devices. That's found in 2 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 11. For God has not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and a sound mind. That's found in 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 7. And behold, I am the Lord, the God of all flesh. Is there anything too hard for me? That's found in Jeremiah chapter 32, verse 27. The purpose of these sessions is to educate, empower, uplift, and to provide end-time tools to assist in navigating our new, fast-paced, and ever-changing world. The mission is to obtain knowledge and be aware of options in preparing for disasters and emergency situations. There will be four sessions out here, one on water, food, hygiene, and energy. I may add additional sessions, but it is as the Lord leads. In this session, you will obtain information on food storage, perishable versus non-perishable, and information on the variety of cooking sources. So I want to give a quick disclaimer that I am not a professional prepper. This information was gained through research and the revelation given to me by our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. So I ask that you please take the information that you will obtain, pray about it, ask God how to proceed forward, and I know that He will direct your path on what is right for you and your family. Let's cover the different categories of foods. You have your non-perishable foods, the semi-perishable foods, and the perishable foods. For your non-perishable foods, those are foods that can be stored for months and even years as long as the conditions are good. Those are foods like wheat, rice, legumes, dry spices, herbs, sugar, oil, ghee. Ghee is like a type of butter, tea, and coffee. Then the semi-perishable foods are foods that can be stored for months and sometimes even weeks. They have to be stored in airtight containers, and pretty much once you open it, the instructions say to refrigerate it. Those are like biscuits, jams, ready to eat or cook meals, powdered spices, potatoes, onion, garlic, pumpkin, and fruits like apples. And the last category is perishable foods. Those perishable foods can basically for days or weeks for storage, and they have to be refrigerated or in low temperature. Those are things like milk, curd, milk products, freshly cooked food, and also green and leafy vegetables. This is probably one of the most important slides that I will do during this food presentation. This information was obtained through the U.S. Department of Agriculture's website. It is important as we go forward that we know how to properly store our food and what we're looking at when you're buying your milk, when you're buying your eggs, when you're buying your pastas and your rice and your different sauces or whatever it is. Most of them have this stamp on here, so it's important that you know. We'll go with the first one. The first one is a best if used by before date. Indicates when a product will be of best flavor or quality. It is not a purchase or safety date, which means a safety date is like when it will expire or go bad. The next one is a sell by date. Tells the store how long to display the product for sale for inventory management. It is not a safety date. The next one is a use by date. It is the last date recommended for the use of the product while at peak quality. It is not a safety date except when you use infant formula. The next one is a freeze by date. Indicates when a product should be frozen to maintain its peak quality. It is not a purchase or a safety date. So there are 4 different ones that you'll need to be aware of when you're storing. Please be aware that none of those say that it expires or is going to go bad. That's when you're dealing with long-term food storages, canned goods, pastas, and rice. It's also saying some of it is according to the peak time, and you can get the best flavor or the best quality, but not in so much that it expires and you need to throw it away. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on perishable foods, but I do have a couple slides on it. So perishable foods are foods that will spoil quickly and should be refrigerated or frozen for preservation. Other perishable foods are meat, poultry, fish, milk, eggs, and many raw fruits, nuts, and vegetables. Cooked foods, including leftovers, are also considered perishable. This is the main reason why I wanted to cover perishable foods. Did you know that you can freeze eggs? I didn't know that you can freeze eggs. Eggs frozen can last up to 1 year. So what you would need is a tray, and you also would need to purchase those silicone cupcake holders. And what you would do is just crack one egg in each cupcake holder and take that tray and slide it into your freezer. Let it freeze completely. And then once you take it out, you can go ahead and peel back that silicone. It peels back very easily. It's washable and reusable, but you can peel it off, and then your egg is frozen completely. You would take it and you would put it into a Ziploc bag that's freezer safe, and you can store it in your freezer for up to a year. And the picture over to the right, I had taken a couple out and said, well, let me just make some scrambled eggs and see how it works. So I took two frozen eggs out, put them in a container, let them unthaw, and then try to whip them up. And I just want to just kind of tell you my experience. When I whip them up, the yolk is a little bit different. It's a little thicker and it's kind of hard, not hard, but it's not smooth like you do with normal eggs. And it wasn't frozen at that time, but for some reason it just didn't break up all the way. But that was okay. I still just stirred it up the best I could, and then I went on ahead and fried it. Tastes just like an egg, no problem with it at all. I also used it again when I made some banana pudding. So I made some banana pudding from scratch, and I took out 6 eggs. I let them all unthaw, and then I put them in my pudding mixture as I stirred it, and that dissolved totally. It was not clumpy, it was smooth, and the banana pudding tastes just fine. So I just kind of want to let you know that this is an option for you, that you can freeze your eggs for up to a year, and it's very low cost. Now let's talk about non-perishable foods, foods that will last for a while if stored properly, though they may lose quality over time. So example of non-perishable foods are foods that you may have in your pantry, such as dry beans, canned soups, and spices. I believe it was on the water slides that we were talking about that it's important that when you store your food, again, a cool, dark, dry place. A cool, dark, dry place. If you will notice, a lot of times it's talking about storing it properly. To the best of your ability, a cool, dark, dry place. I know of individuals who have cleaned out their closets or extra utility closets, or even in the back of their closet, just a space or area in which they have stored their foods just so it can be in a cool, dark, dry place. So if you look at this example of a non-perishable list, I'm not going to read all of it. If you need to pause, you can pause it, but it's anything from canned beans, fruits and vegetables, meats and fish that are canned, popcorn, oatmeal, cereal, powdered milk, graham crackers, and peanut butter. Those are non-perishable foods. Those are things that eventually will lose quality over time, but they are considered non-perishable. Here's the non-perishable foods list that is continued. I'm not going to read all of it. You can just look at it, pause it if you need to, just so you can see the different variety of things that are considered non-perishable so that you will know what it is that you can utilize and purchase for you and your family. So here are pictures of non-perishable foods, things that you can kind of look at, things that you may not have even thought that it would be non-perishable. But these are brands that you can purchase. Some of it is online, some of it is in the stores, but you can find it, and like I said, it is a variety of them. So I would place instant meals, some of them, under the semi-perishable to non-perishable meals. Foods like the ready rice and the ready pastas, eventually those expire. But if you look at anything like your potato buds, your noodles, your completes, those particular ready-to-eat meals, they last for a longer time if you store them properly. All right, let's talk about the commonly used herbs and spices. You got things like salt and pepper, onion powder, chili powder, cocoa powder, garlic powder, bouillon cubes. Bouillon cubes comes in a variety of different flavors. So it's just important that while you're storing your food, the things that you would normally use for seasoning, that you make sure you have some set aside for you and your family. Did you know that some of your condiments can be considered close to non-perishable? They can last for a considerable amount of time, so I probably would say that they're semi-perishable. So there's anything from your ketchup. Some people can't live without ketchup. They eat ketchup on everything. You got your mustard, your salsa, you got steak sauce, pickle relish, vinegar, syrup, and honey. And again, anytime you're storing for honey, as much as you can, get the raw honey or organic raw honey. That is more pure and it will last for a long time. So it's important that you think about what your family likes and store those condiments. This is an FYI slide when purchasing and storing your foods. Number one, purchase what you and your family like to eat. Number two, if it's a new item and you're unsure you want to store it, purchase one, try it out, and if you like it, go back and purchase more. For instance, you heard that Spam is a good product to store away. You go and you purchase Spam and you put it in your storage and you decide, hey, I'm going to cook up one. You cook up one, you don't like it and your family don't like it. Then that's the waste of money. And Spam is not cheap nowadays. So make sure you make smart purchases. Number three, have an idea on what meals you want to make with the items that you purchase. Number four, you can write down your food meal ideas so you don't forget. And remember, store what you eat and eat what you store. Again, store what you eat and eat what you store. One more time, store what you eat and eat what you store. Let's do a quick recap. You may store your food in a pantry, cupboard, or room, preferably in cooler temperatures. Also remember, many staples and canned foods have a relatively long shelf life. However, stored foods that extend past the recommended date on the package may change in quality, color, and/or flavor. Also, for extended shelf life, store food in a cool, dark, dry place. Did you know, according to the USDA, if stored correctly, canned goods can have an indefinite shelf life? Wow! Canned goods is most commonly used when you're storing food long term. And it's because it's simple, it's easy, they're cost efficient. A lot of times there's fruits and vegetables and meats, all kind of things that you can store using cans. But it is important that you make sure that your can has not been compromised and the content inside is not contaminated. So a few things to look out for. It explodes upon opening, it's leaking, it's a bad or unnatural smell, it's discolored, bubbles rise when you open it, it has rust on it, damaged dents, and so that will be around the top seal, around the bottom of the seal, and there's also a side seal underneath the label. There's a side seal, so you want to make sure that seam is not compromised. In addition to that, a loud hiss when you open it, or the lid is bulging or it moves, it pops up and down when you press it, and it makes that noise. As you can see that bottom picture, you press down on it, you can see one is more flat and one kind of has a shine to it because it is bulging. So that would mean that it's probably been through a lot of heat and cold wherever you stored it. So you want to make sure that these things do not happen when you're opening up your cans. These are just a FYI because it can happen. Definitely when you're storing things of high acidity, things like tomato paste, pineapples, tomato sauce, those things that are high acidity sometimes can cause your cans to go bad because of this acidity. It kind of eats away. So you want to make sure that you just check it all before you do consume it. This is a don't forget slide. Every time I look at this slide, it brings back a memory. So I wanted to make sure that I put it in here. Lord help me, I'm going to tell you all this story. So in my younger years, I remember sitting in church And this gentleman walking in, he seemed to be like he was, inebriated and just kind of not quite right, but he came in and the pastor stopped the service and he was like, "Can I help you?" And the man said, "I'm hungry. I want some food." So our church didn't have like a food pantry or anything on hand. Not really. So they ran downstairs and they got this old can that had been sitting on the shelf. We all knew where it was and it had been down there for a while. But they ran down and got this can and of food and they gave it to him. And we remember him saying thank you, and he walked out the church. And when he walked out the church, he came right back in, and he said, y'all got a can opener? I can't open this up." And I remember the pastor saying, "Lord help me, I'm sorry," but he said, "If you're hungry enough, you'll find a way to open it up." So the man just turned around and walked out. And I remember, I'm sitting towards the back of the church, where the young people sit. And one of the young men said, "Man, if you threw that against the rock, it wouldn't even crack it. It wouldn't even open it up." And we all just kind of snickered. But I'm telling you, it is important that when you're preparing, that you think all the way through of what it is that you will need from start to finish. So I have this on here because you have cans that are pop top cans. You can just peel it back. But you also make sure that you have your bottle openers, you have your can openers, and there's a thing called P38 that is small. It's probably like about 2 inches long, maybe 1.5 to 2 inches long. It's what the military uses. It's very small, but it'll take some working that you work it around that can to open it up, but it will open your can. You can get that on eBay or Amazon. You can easily find those, and they're very cost efficient. And most of the time they come in bulk. So as you're preparing, you can take one and tape it to where your pantry is. Put one in a particular stash or whatever it is, but you can get these things and make sure that you are prepared, because you don't want to have a can and you're not able to open it. This is our last slide on canned goods. So canned goods can come with an increased amount of sugar and or salt. So it's important that you read the labels before you purchase it. If it does have the sugar and salt on it and you don't want it, you can always drain it off or you can rinse it. Also know what is recommended for the amount of sugar and salt intake for your body per day. And to nip that in the bud, you also can just purchase canned goods that have the wording on it that says light, less, or free of sodium and or sugar. Another method in which individuals store food is using food that has already been prepackaged for them. That food has already been dehydrated or freeze-dried and placed in containers. Some places place them in plastic storage containers that are heavy duty. Other places uses these cans, which are called number 10 cans, and they are made out of an aluminum, and it gives it safe storage as well. So I'm just going to go over this slide, and the next slide will cover that. These are actual stores that are online. Some of these products you can find in the regular stores, or they can be purchased online. So you have ReadyWise, Patriot Survival, and also the LDS store. And these are all prepackaged for you. You just get it and then you can just store it away, cool, dark, dry place, and it'll be saved. And a lot of times these last for an extended amount of time. So you're looking at 20 to 30 years if you store it correctly. But you have to remember, since it's freeze-dried or dehydrated, you will have to account for that when you're storing your water, because those things need to be rehydrated in order to prepare your meals. So here are 3 more companies you may want to consider. The first one is August Farms. They pretty much store their product in the number 10 cans. As I said in the previous slide, those cans, and a lot of times these foods can last up to 10, 15, 20, 30 years. But at the bottom of it, it'll tell you when you should start consuming it and getting rid of it. So theirs is in the number 10 cans. They do have products that they offer that are of a smaller size that are stored in the Mylar bags. Mylar bags is made up pretty much of like a thick aluminum. It's something that's military grade. It's something that the military uses. As you can see in the next one over, the Mountain House, those are Mylark bags similar to that. So it's just like it is something that you can store away in a cool, dark, dry place, and it will preserve your food. It'll block out the light and all of that. The only thing, like if you stored it in your garage, you just wouldn't want to just put it on the shelf, especially if a mouse or some type of rodent or something has access to it, because it may be able to eat through that. So you would take that and put it in like a bucket or something, a food grade bucket, and store it in there, and then that will preserve your food. The next one is nutrient survival. Nutrient survival can be a little bit more pricey. It's only because they advertise that their food is more nutritious, that they have all the nutrients that you would need in a downgrade situation in which you would have to use their products. So that's something just to consider. You can check them out, especially if you are a healthy eater or you're the person that needs those extra vitamins and minerals in your body. Their food, from what they say, will give you that. So these are other things that you can consider that can be found online. They all have their own separate websites, and you can find them in your stores. Other ways in which you can store your food is through airtight food containers. A lot of those have a rubber seal in the inside of the lid. This is a way that you can put your food in, and it'll preserve it for a longer period of time. Instead of you just taking, let's say, a bag of beans and just put it in your pantry, you can put it in something like that, and it'll preserve it for a longer period of time and keep it fresh. Another is canning jars. Canning jars have multiple uses. You can do many things with it. They have a pop lid, so the ring comes off and then there's a lid underneath it, and that lid comes off. And you can store your food in there. You can use oxygen absorbers to preserve your food depending on the size that you have there. There is a recommended amount of cc's of oxygen absorbers that you will use, as well as it's something you can put in your pantry. You can put it in your freezer, and it won't break, but it is breakable, but it won't break because of the cold or the heat. So canning jars are another way in which you can safely store your food for a longer period of time. So I wanted to go a little bit more in detail about oxygen absorbers. They're primarily used for number 10 cans, for the canning jars, and also for Mylark bags. Oxygen absorbers contain elements that, through a simple chemical reaction, remove the oxygen from sealed containers and prevent spoilage. Mylark bags, as was the picture up at the top, they are made from several layers of laminated food-grade plastic and aluminum. Food will not react with the aluminum because it is separated by a food-grade plastic lining. Mylark bags provide a good light, moisture, and oxygen barrier to protect the food inside the bag. So oxygen absorbers, I will not use them for those plastic sealed containers that I showed you in the previous slide, only because they're not truly airtight. You would use oxygen absorbers for more of a long term, where you're not going to open it up and it will be secured, like no air is coming in and out of that container at all. Just to be thorough, here's the recommended amount of oxygen absorbers you would use for whatever size that you're using. So as you can see, if the container size, and we're talking about here the canning jars, if you have a pint size, which is 16 ounces, it's saying, hey, if you're storing this in there, then this is how many cc's you would need of the oxygen absorbers. And it has 3 different columns on what they're recommending, the amount of cc's that you're using to preserve your food for a longer period of time. And this information can be found online as well. It's very common information. There are books on it and everything on how to do all of this. One of the last ways in which you can store your food is through a food saver. Food saver bags come in different sizes, and you can store your food in there, and it'll do the rest. It'll seal it off at the top. A food saver can be used with food saver bags and Mylar bags and pull out the oxygen and seal the bag. So you put it in there, it'll suck the air out of it, it'll seal it, and it'll make it really compact. It will also remove air from canning jars. So you can use a food saver instead of buying the oxygen absorbers, and it will remove the air from the packaging that you have or the jars that you have and preserve your food long term as well. This slide just basically tells you what you should do if there is a power outage and what you should do if you're not sure about your food, if it's safe to eat or not. So it tells you before, during, and after a power outage what you should do. So before, always prepare. So you can prepare by having cold bottled waters in your freezer that have frozen. Any type of ice or dry ice, those things right there will help your refrigerator or your freezer stay cooler a little bit longer. During a power outage, you want to make sure you keep your refrigerator and your freezer doors closed so your contents will stay as cold as possible. And this tells you 4 hours, 48 hours, and 24 hours. And lastly, after, if you're not sure about your food, you think it's been contaminated, you want to make sure you throw it away. There was something that I saw online that was like a trick on things, something that you can use. So you would take a cup, fill it like halfway up, put it in and fill it with water, just put it in your freezer and let it freeze solid. Then you take like a quarter and you put it on top of there. And you take that cup and you put it in the back of your freezer, just away from everything. So if there's ever a power outage, things will start to melt. So you'll see if that quarter is all the way down, that water is melted, and the quarter is all the way down to the bottom, you know your food is no longer good. If that quarter is halfway through and it may still have some ice crystals in it, then it may be okay to eat. It just depends on how much is unthawed. And then if it's still at the top, you know it's still good and nothing has unthawed, and just put that right back in there for another time. Hopefully it doesn't happen again, but just in case, put it in there. So that is a preventive measure. Okay, so in a grid down situation in which we have no electricity, how are you going to cook your food? Have you thought about that? What are the different ways that you can cook your food? And once I started doing this research, I was thoroughly impressed on what's out there. Here are a few things that you can utilize in which to cook your food. You have the fire pit. Most of the time those are outside on your patio. If you don't have a patio, you still can purchase something like this. They come in big sizes and small sizes, and you can utilize it. Just keep it for when you need it and take it outside when you need to do it. Also, you have fireplaces. So fireplaces, of course, are indoors. They have the proper ventilation and the chimneys in which your smoke can go out of. It doesn't come into your home and cause people to be sick because of the smoke. And also you have your wood burning stove that also has like a exhaust pipe that comes up and is connected and goes outside of your house, as well as the standard barbecue grill. Just remember that anytime you're cooking with anything that's open flame, you'll want to make sure you have the proper pots and pans and utensils that can withstand the heat of fire. So a lot of times people use things like cast iron skillets, cast iron pots. They have everything out there that you can use. Grills that are cast iron. Just make sure you're using something that will withstand the heat. So you also, when we talked about being thorough earlier in the earlier slide, you want to make sure that you have chopped wood if that's what you're going to use. You want to make sure that you have propane if you have a propane barbecue grill. And then also you want to make sure you have charcoal or wood chips, fire starters and matches and lighters and things like that, even things to help you start your fire. So I found out as like a little tip, the length that you get out of your dryer once you're drying it and the length that comes out, you can store that in the bag, and that can be used as leverage to start a fire. So things like that, cost efficient stuff you got in your house anyway. Just be thinking thoroughly when you're starting to do these things. As I said before, the camping store, the camping section in a store is your friend. I was still under the impression that when people went camping and they had to cook, they would get some sticks and put some rocks around that stick and start the fire, and that's the way they cook their food. But they have upgraded, and there are so many different methods and so many different devices that are out there that you can utilize. So we'll go with the first one. It's called a folding camping stove. So what you would do is you would get a Schaefer lighter, and you will stick it in that little door, and the fire would come out through the middle, and that way you can cook your food. You would not be able to boil your food. It will take a while for it to become to a boil, but you would definitely be able to warm your food up. And this is something that you can utilize inside your home. It is safe to cook with that inside your home. The next two are the jet boil and the mini camping stove. They have many different names, many different variations. One you use propane, the other one you use butane. The jet broil you use propane. The mini camping stove you use butane. And if you look at the different um, sizes or the pictures that are there. The propane can be like that, or you can get them in smaller amounts, so it doesn't necessarily mean it looks like that. But the butane pretty much looks like a can of paint spray that you just hook on the side of there and it'll light it up. Both of those will bring your food to a boil if you needed it. Now at the top is a camping stove. They have camping stoves that you can use butane or propane in which to cook with. You'll want to make sure that when you buy that, you're looking to see if you can cook indoors or outdoors, because they have different kinds. If you are cooking indoors, you have to make sure that you have enough oxygen flowing through your house to make sure that there's no carbon monoxide building up, because that is a silent killer. Then you have the bottom one, the camping stove, that just has more aisles in which you can cook on. So if you have a larger family. And the bottom one is the one that impressed me. It's called a Coleman oven. So what it is, it folds flat, but it opens out into this box, a silver box. And so you take it and you place it on top of anything that has an aisle. So a camping stove would be ideal. So you can control the fire of the flame that's coming out. And it has like a thermometer on there where you can see how hot it is or how cold it is. You can control your heat through your aisle on your camping stove. And the interesting thing about it is that it will bake. It will bake your food. It'll bake your muffins. It'll bake your cookies. Now, it won't hold a lot at one time, but it will bake your goods if you needed it to happen. So these are just some of the things to be thinking about. And again, you also want to be thinking about if you're going to need a lighter or any other things that you'll need in order to do that. I do want to make mention that again, that anytime you're cooking indoors, number one, make sure you have one or two working carbon monoxide detectors. That carbon monoxide, again, is a silent killer, so you need to make sure you have that before you do anything. The second thing is make sure you have fire extinguishers in your house, making sure that even if you had it in there for a while, you need to make sure that it's still working. You can just take it to your local fire department and they'll test it out for you, and I believe they'll refill it if it's not full. But you don't just say, I got a fire extinguisher. You make sure that bad boy works. Okay, so don't want to put our family in jeopardy. You go so far, but like I said, you got to be detailed and thorough when you're talking about preparing. As I dwindle down on this food presentation, I just want to take a moment to encourage you to do something. Do not have a to-do list that is blank and you have not began to prepare. Lord forbid any of us have to go through any of this, but I think we know through the Spirit of God that is leading us that something is coming and we must prepare. The important things is that you start somewhere to have extra food for you and your family. Secondly, have methods in which to heat and cook your food. Lastly, if you are storing long term, have ways that will preserve your food items. Note to self, Use your resources. For those of you who are on a strict budget, use your increase in food stamps. Hey, it is what it is. Local food pantries, they're everywhere. You just got to look them up. Purchase off brands. You don't always need name brands for everything. Shop at a discount store. Look for sales. Just start somewhere and add from there. Yes, God will take care of you, especially when you're moving in faith. Know that He'll never leave you or forsake you. At the end of each of these sessions, you will see this slide that says 3 P's: pray, prepare, and practice. Pray. Of course, you should be praying every day throughout each day. Times are moving fast, and sometimes you barely have enough time to catch up with it. So as you begin to pray, the Lord will begin to show you not only the different things that's going on in the world, but how to prepare for what is to come, spiritually and naturally. Prepare. Prepare is an action word. So take action. Do something. If you haven't started, start. Begin by just making a simple list. On that list, include what is of necessity and then what is optional. Add and take away those items as you need. Lastly, practice. Practice your preps. That's very important. In times of disaster, you will not have the time to break open the box and try to read the instructions. So practice now. Know what it does, know where you stored it, and know how to use it. Also, include your family in all of this. Your family should be included when you are praying, when you are preparing, and when you are practicing. And this includes your children. Know that a day may come where food and water may be scarce. Prepare your children so they're not caught off guard. Work together as a family. Be prepared for what is to come. Acknowledge the Lord in all your ways, and He will direct your path. I have commanded the ravens to feed you, and it shall be that thou shalt drink of the brook, and I have commanded the ravens to feed thee there. That's found in 1 Kings chapter 17, verses 4 through 6. God commanded the ravens to go and feed the prophet. And if you know anything about ravens, ravens are greedy and stingy birds. But God used the ravens to get the glory out of that situation. I want to encourage you that Jesus Christ is the same yesterday and forevermore. So let Him be your Jehovah Jireh. Let Him be your provider. Let Him be your way maker. Trust the Lord. Let Him lead you. Take heart. Gear up by the power of the Lord Jesus Christ and begin to prepare for what is to come.